years of weight loss experience that I need to talk about, so why not choose the best time to get started? And before I talk about the real chunk or the meat about it, I think a little background is necessary. So we're going to talk about my weight gain, really started around 9 years old. And around that age was when I started to eat more, I started to gain weight, I started to play football. It comes a couple of years later, but I started to really gain weight during that time. And so by the time I did play football, going into middle school, so it'd be around 11, 12, 13, I had already gotten to 300 pounds. So at that point, right, I'm at this age where I'm a lot bigger than I should be. And so football was one of the better routes I started with, and that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, was I actually wanted to kind of slow down the weight gain, which it did for a while, especially as I got into high school. When I continued my football career, about 5 years in high school, I slowly trickled off from 315 up into like the 360, excuse me, round. But going from that 315 up into that 360 route was that time in my high school football career. And I ended up spraining my ankle, and I got higher into 400. So by the time I graduated, I was a really big boy. And this would lead me into 2017. So 2017, about first 2 years of undergrad, college, I kind of managed the weight a bit. Went from, that 400, and I trickled down to 375. And this would lead me to May 27th of 2019, where during that time, I really decided, okay, I think I need to try and lose weight. I want to try and put a cap on this. I want to try and fix this. And so two main goals that I kind of started with myself to really get to losing this weight was I wanted to stop sweating so much. Not that that's changed much, but that kind of makes sense. And I also wanted to make walking up the stairs, simple as that sounds, a lot easier because it was a challenge. And one thing I noticed when moving out of my dorm room, that this was not fun. It was not easy, especially in South Carolina heat. So I wanted to fix that. And so those were the driving forces that really led me into my weight loss. And so in the beginning of that, one of the things I started to change was, and I started to do this in high school, was I really started to dive into my nutrition. I wanted to learn more, and I also wanted to make my own food. And I enjoy cooking. So your chicken, your beef, your fish, those are the things I kind of really stuck with. If I had chicken, I would have protein pasta. Not that I would necessarily do that now. Or I would have like ground beef and pasta. Or I would steak if I really wanted it. And like sweet potatoes or asparagus. I kind of played around with these different combinations. Or I love salmon and tilapia. Not that I really eat tilapia much anymore, but I really do still love salmon. And during that time, I kind of played with these from baking them to cooking them on top of the stove. I kind of really stopped eating fried things a long time ago because it didn't really make me feel great, even as a child. And so when I started doing this, I structured my days to where for lunch, I would really only have a sandwich. It was a bologna sandwich with cheese. Definitely wouldn't do that anymore. Not the best route to take. But my dinners, I would usually have like chicken breast and green beans. Or I'd have like a fillet of salmon or steak, if I was really feeling it, and like some sweet potatoes or like asparagus. And that's what I would kind of run with that. And so I would consistently make those and have them ready throughout the week. Because at the time, during the summer of that 2019, I was an RA. I was an intern. So I actually lived on campus. I lived in the dorm, so I was able to keep my food and take it with me to work. And that kind of brings up the next point was my physical activity went up. I artificially kind of do it. Being in college, you gotta walk everywhere anyway. But in this sense, I didn't have a car. So I walked to work. It wasn't that far, but it wasn't exactly around the corner where our office was. And so some of the projects and different things I had to do during that time, I would walk there, be like 5 days a week. The only thing is, however, when you're walking about 4,000 steps, where there's in South Carolina, where there's hills, and around like broad daylight of like 11, where it's hot and swampy some days in the nice June of Colombia, it's not the best time. And that was also a factor too, which leads me to being hydrated. So another thing I did was I increased my amount of water. Not that I didn't drink less as a kid, but I started drinking less sugary drinks. and I would remove sugar from a lot of different things. My sweet tea, which that was hard at first because I love sweet tea, but I switched it for like maybe just regular iced tea or water in that sense. I would start using like sugar-free Gatorades. I don't really consume those like Gatorades much anymore. One thing I didn't do at the time was I didn't use electrolyte powders, or at the very least, I didn't combine like magnesium and sodium in my water. So I was drinking water, but I wasn't truly hydrated. I was really just kind of flushing myself out. So I was always cramping, even like after my lifts or at the end of the day. And so that was a part of my studies that I learned over these 5 years to start incorporating. And so with those 3 things came with intermittent fasting. And so I have intermittent fasting, cooking my own meals, and then increasing my physical activity with water. And so I would eat about noon, and I would kind of stop around like 9 p.m. It's usually the hard cutoff. Unless I didn't hit a caloric goal for the day, then I would go past it because that was better than not eating enough. And so those are the tools I kind of started off with while trying to lose weight. And another thing I kind of dug back out from the crevices when I played football was I had done structured training. And so I decided to tamper with it and started to create my own from having done football, track and field, competed a little bit with powerlifting in high school. And so I made them myself. And so I would lift 5 days a week, about 2 hours long, about a good 30-minute session of warm-up and agility at the beginning. Then I would lift maybe about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I would do a little bit of conditioning afterwards. This was 5 days a week. So a little bit of conditioning I did afterwards would sometimes be like interval run. Maybe I would do like a long distance run. Maybe some sprints depending on the day. Those I would incorporate in. And so while doing that, on like Saturday or Sunday, because our gym wasn't really open on the weekends, I would just go for like a run. So I'd just make it like an agility day, or I would do like broad jumps, like some plyometrics to kind of throw in there. And then Saturday, sometimes it was Sunday, I kind of really didn't do much. I maybe do a little bit of flexibility, mobility training, go for a walk, but nothing too crazy. And then Saturdays I would go out with like either my friends or my parents, and we would kind of get something. And that was the day I would like, maybe I want Wendy's, and I'll get a Wendy's burger or whatever. But the rest of my day stayed the same. So I still had the intermittent fasting portion going on, and I would have like the burger or whatever if I wanted that. And that would kind of be my meal for the day, because whether I played myself or it was, I'd be like, all right, I'm sated, no more food, I'm good. And I would just kind of consume water for the rest of the day. And then Sunday, I kind of went back to my normal routine for the week. And while doing that, traveling through that summer, I ended up going from 375 to 325-ish, right there. Everyone starts coming back, friends coming back, and I slowed down. And I continued doing it for a year. I get into 2020, we get to COVID year, around like March. That's when we all got sent home. I didn't have access to the gym anymore, so my training had to change. I did more calisthenics, I did more mobility, and I did a lot more running. And so my physical body was different during that time. And I actually ended up going from that summer, or that March until August, to 275 to 239. And I stayed there. And one of my biggest regrets from this kind of era time period was I didn't really feel much of my training. I didn't really feel much of my training anyway, but specifically the mobility portion, because I got pretty mobile, pretty flexible during that time, especially being at that weight. And I got really close to being able to do the front split, not middle split. I tried, but didn't get there. Will I try again? Yeah, why not? But not the focus at the moment. So my body was very different, and that was one thing I really wanted to wait to kind of do this. I want to catalog each of these years. It's almost like each time period was like a case study of training and how my body looked. It was very fun to kind of keep track of all that. Nerve-wracking all the same, because I'm not one for cameras, but it was something I wanted to do. And we get to the end of that summer of 2020, and that's when I picked up jiu-jitsu. It was, of all the sports and disciplines I've been a part of, was probably my favorite. Unfortunately, other obligations now as a coach have kind of pulled me away from it just from my ability to train, but I do want to get back into it. I do not want to be the blue belt that made his way out and won't come back until he's like 47. Like I want to, once I'm stabilized and I'm much more structured with how I do my coaching, I will definitely re-up on that, because I really do miss jiu-jitsu and I want to compete again. I enjoyed competing, and that was a really big driver. That was another driver added on to me wanting to continue my weight loss, was being in the big boy division. as you're trying to lose weight isn't exactly fun too for jiu-jitsu, because there's a lot of ups and downs going on with that. But I can continue to stay around 236 during that time. So now we're going into the fall of 2020 up until the spring of 21, leading up to my graduation. I kind of stayed between 239 and 255. And I graduated, I ended up working for the summer, competed again, and then I darted off to Texas. Right? By that time, I had kind of trickled my way back up to 260, and then I stayed in Texas for that first while, trying to figure out, you know, the new area. I'm in a different state, different school, different atmosphere, different gym, new people, was alone for the most part. So I'm staying between 260 and 245 during that time. And then my training started to dwindle off due to just the gyms I had in proximity. And grad school started to pick up a bit. And so going into 2022, I started to realize that I'm not going to be able to really sustain this. And with motivation, I picked up rugby, because why not? It was originally what I wanted to play in high school, but we didn't have it anymore. But I came here, it was offered as a club, and I started to pick my way up with that. And I wanted to run with it. And I really did enjoy it. Wouldn't consider myself the best player, mainly because there's a reason why I was a lineman. Not great at catching. Throwing, sure, whatever. Not the greatest at catching. But I learned that on really quick, and I think all my teammates did too. But if anything, I was in obstacles and I was in the way, so I will take that much. But it was another kind of piece in my career that I added on to. And so with that, I was like, okay, I like it. Still not jiu-jitsu, but we'll continue on. And so I tend to stay around the 255, 265 range during that, all the way up until we're leading into 2023. Now, where I'm getting close to graduate with my master's, and I get down to about 247. And during that summer, with different stressors, whether it be, you know, job, I graduated, trying to figure out where I want to live, moving, and all that great stuff. I mean, I still was losing weight over time, ended up getting down by the end of the summer to about 228. And I was like, okay, let's try something new. I've experienced different aspects of training. Why not bodybuilding? Let's try that. Let's see where that takes me. So that was something else. I wanted to start programming for myself. I wanted to learn, and I started implementing. And my physicality changed once again. One of the things, though, that as I was doing it, although looking bigger and looking stronger was what I enjoyed, and kind of filling out the loose skin, one of the things that I wasn't too fond of was my lower mobility, and that could just be how I program. It's a learning curve. And range of motion, flexibility started to go away. Overall fatigue was a bit higher. And I'm trying to do bodybuilding training while now being a borderline full-time strength coach. So it was a lot of the manage at a time. So I was like, okay, we'll continue this. And then I go up until about January of this year, 24. And I was like, all right, let's shift the back a bit to including more balance. I want to try a little bit more mobility in my training. And so with these 5 years, something was different each time. I learned something new with my diet. That had changed with when I got to this sort of bodybuilding phases. I was consuming a lot more protein, borderline nearly 200 grams a day, which was rough. There was a lot of protein shakes, and there was a lot of beef, just ground beef, scarfed down during that time. And pizzas. I did bring pizzas back, which not the best for the skin and overall bloating, but it was a little trial phase. And during all of that, but with these 5 years of this weight loss, I kind of went from overall 400, barring the extra 25 in the beginning, to where I sat down at my lowest at 215, but I didn't feel the greatest. I felt very thin, pretty low, and I actually did have a DEXA scan at one point, and it said I was around like 7% body fat, maybe a little lower than that. And so didn't feel too comfortable. So I rest now between about 220 and 230 is where I think I sit, before maybe future endeavors involving the skin will come in place. With that all being said, this video is still pretty long, but I said I would go in depth. I haven't truly gone there, and that's because some of the good side that came from the weight loss, as well as some of the darknesses that come from it, I think they deserve their own video. And I think they deserve their own attention, where I can really truly go in depth about the right things, about clothes, and about shopping, and about shoe size, But I can also really have to talk about the dark stuff that came along to it with eating and how relationships were affected once I started to have to change how I needed to eat and interact for my diet, as well as a lot of introspection into what led to me getting to 400 pounds. Because that kind of being the next topic that I want to talk about is I'm of the belief you don't get to 400 pounds by accidents in a lot of cases. And there's a lot of things growing up, especially within the last 12 years, that had to be uncovered, that had to be thought about, contemplated on, and really brought to the light to make understanding of where this weight gain came from. And in some videos, people talk about this darkness, but I want to go a bit more in depth because I think it's necessary to understand what led here. Because with massive weight loss, not everything is always sweet. But thank you. I enjoy your time. And hopefully you stick around to hear each phase of this and why each part is important. Tell me, how honest do you plan on being with them? Do you plan on continuing to hide? Continuing to lie?